everyone. You know, it's a beautiful day today. I am just sitting doing a little bit knitting. I'm having a rest. I've been in my garden. I've cut all my 3 lawns in the back garden, a very large one, a small one above the patio, and one in the front garden, medium-sized one in the front garden. But I've also cut the large area outside my back garden, outside the fence, because I've told people before, we have the Reavers cycle path runs along, and we have a lot of, it is land that the council should come and keep tidy, but they don't. All this stuff grows, brambles and everything up against our fences, and it was coming in through my fences, and it was actually going over, looping over onto the cycle path. So my son came, and he had cut it down for me once before, and I had a bit problem when I was cutting because there was a lot of stones. The cycle path was like a lot of stones that were put down, but they were usually fine stones, but there was 1 or 2 large ones, and those large ones got onto the grass that I used to cut outside my garden, and my lawnmower hit one day and caused a hole in my leg. It shot me in the leg, and that was why I never did it again. But my son came and he cut it down for me again and told me, make sure you wear your jeans, he says, when you're cutting out here. And you know, I've got shorts and a sun top on, and that's what I cut that outside. But I just remembered after I nearly finished, should have put my jeans on, but it was okay. I got it tidied, but it did take me about an hour and a half altogether to cut all the lawns and that place outside, because I wasn't going to let it all grow back again. And there's not really any grass, it was just all weeds that were coming up, but it was best to cut it. So I need a rest before I do anything else in my garden. So I had cut the back first. I came in, had my lunch, and then I went and done the front. But I really needed a rest after that before I can do, because there's a lot of weeds I'm going to dig up in the garden, in the back garden. I'm checking this pattern to make sure I'm doing the right stitch. It's not a knit stitch at the end, it's just a knit one, purl one. So that's why I'm sitting here on such a lovely day. I just couldn't do anymore. I couldn't bend over anymore. So I thought, I'm going to have about an hour's rest. I'll do a little bit knitting. I'm having a cup of coffee here as well. But I was at my quiz night last night, and we did a little bit better than last week, because this is only our 2nd week going, and we were joint second last. Little bit better. We got a few more points than last week, you know, once we're getting to know the quiz. But the conversation when we were talking got on about cousins and things like that, because my friend Anne and her son Michael, there was only 3 of us last night. Well, Anne is from a large family, and they've got lots and lots of cousins and that, and I just happened to mention that. I says, I was from a very large family as well. I says, my father had the oldest brother was Christopher, then there was George, then there was my dad, then was Egbert, or he got known as Ted, which I don't blame him, with a name like Egbert, and Freddie. And there was also a sister called Violet. So my father was one of 6. Isn't that right, Joe? No, Violet was actually the oldest of all of them. So there was Violet, Christopher, George, my dad, Ted, yes, father, one of 6. And I have an awful lot of cousins, but I don't know any of them. I think George moved to London, so never seen him. Ted or Egbert, he moved down south to Essex, and the rest were just around. But I did know some of them when we were children, when we were younger, when some of them still lived up this area. And I was very friendly with one of my cousins, Pamela, who we were more or less about the same age. And right up until I was about 17, I think, we were the best of friends. We're even working at the same place. I was working at Rington's Tea Factory at the time. I was working on the dispatch, and I remember Pamela got a job there as well, and she was working in the factory as well. And we used to go everywhere. We used to go out together, you know, to local dance places and everything, right up until she was about 17. And I never knew, for some reason, she was the only one out of all of my cousins I ever had anything to do with. I did with some of the other ones when we were very young, but as it all parted and went different ways and that, we never saw them again. Except for Pamela. Now, Pamela was an only child, and I had two sisters, but I was the only one out of the three of us that was friends with Pamela. My younger sister, Linda, was 4 years younger. Me and Pamela were about the same age, so Linda would have been a pest. And Eleanor, my older sister, was 4 years older than me, so we wouldn't have, you know, she wouldn't have bothered with us either. But just, I don't know what happened, but Pamela just stopped coming to my house. Well, we didn't have phones in those days in our houses, and, you know, I think the only way, if we lived a bus rides away from each other, about 15-minute bus rides away from each other. So if you went to each other's houses, it was on the bus, because neither of our parents had cars. My father didn't drive, and anyway, I went to her house one day. Didn't seem to be anybody in. I got no answer or anything, and I thought, oh, there must just be a way out somewhere. So I think I tried 2 other times, and I swore one time there was someone in the house, and they never answered the door. Now, just to let you into a little bit of information, my mother didn't like my father's family, didn't get on with my gran. In fact, my father didn't get on with his mother. There was a lot of things going on that I do remember, you know, as a child and all that, about arguments and things like that. But anyway, Pamela had also left the job she was doing. She went to work somewhere else, and I didn't know why. She was just ignoring me. I thought I had done something. I didn't know what had happened, and I'm doing a wrong stitch here. And after a few years, I had heard that she got married. But that was all I ever heard. I never knew where she lived or anything, and I forget. Actually, I'm about 17 or 18. I'm not sure the exact age when we last seen each other. But for to be as friendly as we were, and then for that to happen, you know, we just couldn't understand. I just couldn't understand what had. But as time went on, I moved as well. I moved away. My parents moved away from where we were living and went somewhere else and that, and just forgot all about it. And anyway, it was years later. I was in my 70s, and I found my cousin on Facebook. So I messaged her and explained to her who I was, because she wouldn't have known the married name, but I recognised the photograph of her. It was her married name, but I recognised the photograph because she had a photograph when she was younger up. So I changed my photograph to a photograph of me younger, and I messaged her and explained to her who she was, and she was over the moon, and so we could meet. So we did. I went to her house, and we had a really long, very long conversation, and I asked her, I says, why was it? I says, all them years ago when we were teenagers, I says, and all of a sudden, you just didn't want anything to do with me. She says, Sheila, she says, it wasn't you, it was the whole family. I said, well, what do you mean the whole family? I said, what did the whole family have to do with us being friends? And she says, well, she says, remember, she says, I had my boyfriend at the time and we were going to get married. And I said, well, I do remember you had a boyfriend and that. And she says, well, we were going to get married and we're sorting out the wedding arrangements and everything, and was making out the invitations for the wedding. And she says, I made the invitation out to your mum and dad. And she says, my nana said, it was my grandmother as well. She had my nana said, if they are coming, I'm not coming. And my mum and dad, that was just it. They just did what she wanted. And I was told that I couldn't go and see you anymore, and that was it. And I thought, well, look, we were about 18 years old. I says, people do not tell you who you can see and who you can't see at that time. She says, oh, but she says it would have caused a lot of trouble in the family and all that. And so I'm saying, well, why did our grandmother not want us at the wedding? She says it was something to do with your dad. He'd been causing trouble in there. So that was all my dad's fault. And so I was telling her, I do remember a few things when I was younger about my mum and dad and my grandparents. Well, only my grandmother, because I was born in 1946 and my father's father would be my grandfather, died in 1947, so I never knew him. And I know there had been a lot of animosity. My father was always going down to my grandmother's and causing trouble, and for reasons I never knew about until years later. I think my dad was upset about something. I think it was after his mother had died, and he was upset about something, and I'm thinking it's to do with, her dying and that, and asked him, I says, Dad, I says, why did we have so much trouble with my grandmother? I says, and you're so upset about her dying now? And he said, well, he says, you don't know, he says, that your mum was married before she met me. I says, I do know that she was married. I says, she was widowed. And my dad says, yes, I know, but I didn't realise you knew. And I says, well, my mother's mother, my grandmother told me all about it, that my mother's first husband was on the battleship during the war. He was on the battleship the Hood. That was sunk by the Bismarck, which, there's been a film called Sink the Bismarck. You might remember that. And that's when my mother's first husband was lost at sea when the Bismarck sunk the Hood. And my mother also had a child who would have been my half-sister, but she died the year I was born because there was a diphtheria epidemic at the time, and both my half-sister and one of my older sister, Eleanor, my mother was expecting me at the time. They both got diphtheria and my half-sister died. Maureen, her name would have been. So my dad's saying, well, now, he says that your mum was married before, and that who Maureen, who you never knew, she had a little girl, Maureen. And I met your mum, and we wanted to get married, and my mother didn't want us to get married because I was only 19 at the time. I think my mother was just over a year older than my dad, and my dad said that at the time you had to be 21 to have permission to get married. But she says, your grandfather, his name was Christopher. She says, your grandfather Christopher made your grandmother sign the papers to let me get married. And that was why there was a lot of trouble between us and my mother, or my grandmother, as much as my dad telling me this. She never liked your mum never liked her, and there was loads and loads of trouble going on all this time, all those years and that, and it just came to a head when Pamela was getting married, and But he didn't tell me at the time about anything that Pamela told me about why all this happened. So that's something I found out after all those years. But you know, I visited my cousin Pamela a couple of times, but the relationship just was not the same. Not like when we were teenagers, and she did want me to bring my sister Linda to visit her one day. She did ask me to bring Linda, and she was going to make a meal for us. But Linda wouldn't go because Linda didn't know Pamela when we were kids, and she didn't want to know her now. And my cousin Pamela took the huff over that, so I've lost touch with her again. I tried to tell her that I did ask Linda, but she wouldn't have it. She just thought we were being funny and didn't want to know her. So I've decided I don't want to know any of my cousins ever again. I'll just stay the way I am. I've got plenty children, grandchildren, and so that was just a little bit story about families and how they can grow apart. And I am just going to do a little bit, and I've done knit there and I should have done purl. That's because I'm busy talking, that's what it is. So anyway, I'm just going to finish my cup of coffee and finish my little bit knitting, probably in about another 15 minutes, and I'll be back in my garden again. And you know, according to my phone, the temperature today and the sunshine is supposed to be wall-to-wall sunshine all day. It was when I first went out into the garden, but it's turned very cloudy and it's cooling down. It's 21 degrees where I am today. But I think with the cloud coming out, it's getting a bit cooler, which I'm glad because it was a little bit warm. You know, I was actually sweating when I came in. So that's my bit for today. So thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you all another time. So bye for now.